There's a by-election, this by-election in Rutherglen, and you used to hold the seat. SNP won it in 2019. Since then, the MPs had to stand down for breaking COVID rules. The SNP is under investigation over its financing. A 110,000 camper van suddenly appeared from nowhere. Their new leaders identified with a poor health service and an unpopular policy on gender reassignment. How is it possible that the SNP is still neck and neck with you in Scotland?
Well, we've made tremendous progress and we're taking nothing for granted in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West by-election. We've knocked on 80,000 doors, we've spoken to 30,000 people, delivered hundreds of thousands of leaflets and been listening very clearly to what those voters have been telling to the Labour Party. And what they're saying is they're very concerned about the cost of living crisis. They're very concerned about the direction of both governments, 13 years of failure at Westminster from the Conservatives and 16 years of failure from the SNP in Scotland. And they are desperate for change, and our candidate Michael Shanks in Rutherglen and Hamilton West provides the opportunity for that fresh start. Don't forget, when Anas Sarwar became leader of the Scottish Labour Party and Keir Starmer at the UK Labour Party, the Scottish Labour Party were polling 14%. Now that we're neck and neck and on the up against the SNP, we're looking forward to the general election that can't come soon enough.
Yeah, you're telling me, I'm sure correctly, how hard you're working, but that in a way rather emphasises the point. You're working hard, the SNP is imploding, but still you can't get clear of them. Why won't Scots warm to Labour, given that this was a Labour country? Used to return 45, 50 members of Parliament in the old days.
Well, the latest projections, as you're talking about the polls, and they are only polls, have us neck and neck with the SNP, but indeed the extrapolation of the seat numbers from that would probably have us ahead. We're taking absolutely nothing for granted, which is why we're working very hard, because we have to earn the right of every single voter to put the cross in the Labour box, and that's what we're demonstrating in Rutherglen and Hamilton West on Thursday. I mean, Keir Starmer's been very, very clear that the route to the Labour government, the next Labour government, runs through Scotland. He's very clear it's a priority for him, and we're working very, very hard, both in policy terms, but indeed holding our governments to account in terms of providing that support to local people, providing that voice and providing that alternative. Change is coming to Scotland, everyone knows that, and we're working very, very hard to ensure that we can get our positive message across on the doorsteps to the voters, so that we can make sure that we can win the next general election and kick out this Conservative government.
One change that isn't coming to Scotland is that 45% of the people, or thereabouts, still want independence, and slightly larger percentage think that there ought to be a referendum. Your party leader, unless you're going to tell me different, has been very clear. There will be no referendum, there will be no independence for Scotland. And isn't that your problem? That until you shift on that, that 45% or thereabouts are never going to come back to Labour.
But that's just not what we're seeing in the polls. The priority of the Scottish people at the moment has nothing to do with the Constitution, and of course the question will continue to be polled, but it's gone so far down the list of priorities it's nearly fallen off the end, because people are worried about the cost of living crisis, they're worried about their energy costs, they're worried about the fact that 1 in 7 are on NHS waiting lists in Scotland, they're worried about the future, and they have a concerted effort to want to kick out this Conservative government at Westminster, and they're very concerned about the 16 years of failure from this SNP government. So they're continually turning to Labour to see what we've got to say, and we want to put forward that positive policy platform that would takes us into the next election. That's what they're telling us on the doorsteps, that's what we're doing when we're listening to people in all four corners of Scotland, and that's what we want to try and deliver. The Constitution is a low priority, but you are correct to say that our position is no to independence and no to a second independence referendum, because if we have the privilege of being in power after the next general election at UK level, we'll want to deliver our manifesto and we'll want to deliver the missions that Keir has set out.
Yeah, but the point that some of your colleagues make is that as long as you still have the wrong position, I put that in inverted commas, on this question of independence and on the referendum, the people who are going to take a look at Labour, as you say, will take a look at Labour, but they will still choose to vote for the SNP. And, you know, Hamza Yusuf, the First Minister, is going to have to do something extreme, you know, slaughter the firstborn, ban iron brew or something, in order to detach those people from the SNP.
Well, the First Minister's doing his very best to have people detaching themselves from the SNP with his failure on public services, his failure in government. And if you look at everything over the last 16 years in Scotland and 13 years across the UK, people are worse off and things are getting worse. So they are failing governments, and we're providing that positive alternative. That change, everyone knows that next election's got to be about change. Everyone knows that only a vote for the Labour Party can kick the Conservatives out of Downing Street. And everybody knows we've got a very positive agenda, and the voters of Rutherglen and Hamilton West are responding to that, and we'll see the result as we come into early part of Friday morning of next week.
OK, I want to ask you about HS2, but I just want to check one thing. Labour says it won't sign off on new oil exploration licences in the North Sea. Offshore Energy UK says that the industry supports 200,000 jobs, including 90,000 in Scotland. Is Labour telling Scots that it won't sign off on oil exploration licences so they can start looking for jobs elsewhere?
Well, what we want to try and do is deliver the fifth mission that Keir laid out at the tail end of last year, which is to turn the UK into a green superpower. We're losing the global race on this, and we have all the renewable facilities and all the opportunity to be able to deliver that green superpower by decarbonising our energy by 2030. That creates the 50,000 jobs in Scotland. We will have GB Energy, a publicly owned energy company headquartered in Scotland, creating jobs, and all the jobs that are currently in the North Sea will be around for a long time to come, but we'll be creating new and additional jobs in the renewable sector, which is what the skills we're looking for. This is a huge and exciting and bold and ambitious agenda, and we should all be getting right behind it.
All right, before I let you go, can you just help me solve a puzzle? The Mayor of Manchester, Labour Mayor of Manchester, Andy Burnham, said on this programme last week that Labour is committed to bringing HS2 from central London to Manchester. Yet, for the past 2 weeks, on several Sky programmes, Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, Pat McFadden have all refused to make that commitment. Should I add you to the list of those who are sitting on the fence, or are you with Andy Burnham? It's going to happen.
Well, it's quite clear we want the HS2 line delivered. It doesn't go into London at the moment, and it doesn't go into the north. You had your levelling up secretary on the programme earlier, who should be called the dumbing down secretary. He's letting down the north. But if the government blow a hole in the HS2 programme, we're going to have to assess what it's like at the next election. That's a perfectly sensible thing to do. We want it to happen. We want the line to be completed. That's the right thing to do for the north of England. But in actual fact, we can't really commit, given what the government won't tell us the numbers. They won't give us a commitment to whether or not they will deliver it, and at this moment in time we wouldn't know at the next election what that hole in that HS2 project would look like.
So that's a pretty clear answer. We can't tell you.
Well, we can't tell you because the government can't tell us, and until they tell us, we can't do an assessment of where we will be. You've just had had many government members on your programme this morning who can't commit to anything at this stage, and they're all fighting with each other in terms of leadership candidates for the next leader of the Conservative Party.
All right. Ian Murray, thank you very much indeed.